Ladies and gentlemen, something fundamental just changed, and you can feel it. You can feel the panic spreading. This is not spin. This is not hype. This is the moment the switch flipped. Now, for months, we were told the Minnesota fraud story was overblown. First, it was a few million, then it was hundreds of millions, then it quietly crossed $1 billion. And now, federal investigators are openly warning the real number could be $9 billion in stolen taxpayer money. I can hardly even fathom $9 billion stolen. Can you? Now, here's where everything collides, guys, because at the exact same time that the scandal is exploding, President Donald J. Trump has unleashed a new enforcement posture that doesn't just claw back money. It reopens citizenship itself when fraud is involved. Not rhetoric, not campaign talk, policy. DOJ action, real consequences. That's why the system is panicking, because this isn't about politics anymore. It's about exposure. It's about paper trails. It's about deportations, immigration filings, nonprofits, shell corporations, shell organizations, and years of silence that suddenly can't hold. Now, the media didn't want to touch this. State officials didn't want federal eyes on this thing. And the people who benefited most assumed the clock would never run out. But Trump just restarted the clock. This is what happens when a war on fraud collides with the largest public theft scandal that most Americans have never been told about. And tonight, we're going to go ahead and walk through why the panic is real, who's suddenly at risk, and why this story is only getting better and bigger from here, folks. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the moment everything changed, because this wasn't gradual and it wasn't accidental. President Donald J. Trump, as of December 23rd, 2025, he didn't just talk about cracking down on fraud. His administration formally flipped the enforcement posture of the federal government. Now, for years, fraud was treated like a paperwork issue, a clerical problem, if you will. Something you settle with audits, fines, or compliance agreements. That era is over. Under Trump, fraud is now framed for what it really is. Theft from the American people. Not victimless, not abstract, real money stolen from taxpayers, meant for families, communities, and public trust. And when that switch flips, everything downstream changes. Investigators, prosecutors, timelines, and consequences. This is why people who benefited from delay, silence, or complexity, they're suddenly nervous. Because once fraud is treated as theft, excuses stop working. The clock stops being flexible, and the question becomes very simple. Who knew and when? This is the point of no return moment, and everyone inside the system felt it instantly. Now, this is where the panic sharpens, because Trump's policy doesn't stop at clawing back money. This administration has made it very clear. Citizenship obtained through fraud, misrepresentation, or concealed criminal conduct can be revoked. That's not some new law. That authority has existed for decades. What's new is the willingness to use it. This is not speculation. It's DOJ policy grounded in precedent, upheld by court, and activated through formal enforcement channels. Now, if somebody lied on their immigration paperwork, concealed material facts, or even used fraudulent status to access benefits, that status is now back on the table. Now, here's the point. Here's a very key point here, guys. This is not about mass action or mass deportation. This is about case-by-case exposure, paper trails, sworn statements, signatures, records that don't change just because time passed by. This is why this hits differently. Fines can be repaid, grants can be repaid, but citizenship questions cut deeper. And once they're opened, there's no media spin that puts that door back together. Now, here's where the story really starts to unravel, because Minnesota was never just $1 billion. That was the comfortable number, the number officials could say without triggering federal alarms. Now, at first, it was framed as roughly $250 million. Then, internal audits quietly revised that upward. Then, whistleblowers, inspectors, and federal reviewers started seeing the same pattern repeated again and again. Duplicate claims, layered reimbursements, nonprofits billing against the same services, and timelines that just simply didn't add up. That's when the figure crossed $1 billion. And now, federal investigators are openly acknowledging that when you widen the lens across years, across programs, across agencies, the exposure could approach $9 billion. Now, this didn't happen because no one noticed. It happened because early warnings were minimized. They were delayed or even buried. Each delay multiplied the losses. Each year of inaction widened the hole. This is why the outrage isn't emotional, it's mathematical, and the math is damning. And what just happened in Minnesota is the same mistake that I see people make every single year with Medicare. I mean, a woman told me that she ignored the annual Medicare letter saying that her plan was changing. She assumed everything was fine. She assumed it didn't matter. It did matter. Her Medicare plan quietly dropped her specialist, and she didn't find out until she needed care. This is how these systems work. The warning comes early, the consequences come later, and by the time you realize what changed, the damage is already done. This is exactly why I partner with Chapter, folks. Chapter reads those Medicare changes for you. They explain what actually changed and helps update your coverage so that you're not blindsided when it matters most. No pressure, no sales games, just clarity. Most people are already dialing the phone number at the bottom of your screen because, number one, it's totally free. Tons of people are saving money, or they're clicking the link down below to get access to Chapter. Let my friends over at Chapter know that Ron Yates says hello. Phone number is 909-563-8279. So, all right, let's keep this thing going, because the people who ignored the early warnings in Minnesota, they're finding out the hard way what happens next. And so once federal investigators step in, the story stops being political and it starts being forensic. Now, this is not about one bad program or one broken office. The money trail, it runs through nonprofits, layered subcontractors, payroll systems, food assistance programs, and grant pipelines that were never designed to withstand this level of abuse. Investigators, they don't need names to see patterns. They follow flows. Repeated vendors, circular payments, organizations billing for services that can't be verified at scale, payroll spikes that don't match staffing, claims filed faster than services could physically be delivered. Now, here's what makes this dangerous for everyone involved. The federal fraud investigations don't isolate one program. They cross-reference everything. Immigration records, tax filings, corporate registrations, banking activity. So this is why so many people didn't want this followed all the way down, because once the trail is mapped, silence stops protecting anyone. The structure itself becomes the evidence. So this is the collision point, and it's not coincidence. Trump's fraud crackdown and the Minnesota scandal were always headed toward each other because they operate in the same legal space. So when federal fraud enforcement expands, investigators don't just ask where did the money go, they ask who was eligible to receive it in the first place. This is where immigration status, benefit eligibility, nonprofit certification, and sworn documentation all intersect. A benefits-heavy fraud scandal automatically triggers immigration and status reviews when fraud or misrepresentation is suspected. That's just jurisdictional overlap. It's not politics. So when Trump reactivated denaturalization authority tied to fraud, it didn't create new risk. It exposed existing risk that had been ignored. This is why panic spreads unevenly. Not everyone is affected. Only the people whose paperwork, status, or access depends on representations that don't survive scrutiny. This is what happens when enforcement silos disappear. The system finally talks to each other, and the truth moves faster than damage control. Now, I want you to watch how the coverage changed because it tells you everything. Now, early on, the Minnesota story was treated like noise, a local issue, a partisan complaint. Headlines were small, language was soft, numbers were vague. Then the figures grew. Oh, and boy, did the figures grow. The federal investigators stepped in. Then the billion-dollar threshold shattered. Suddenly, the tone shifted. More qualifiers, more could be, more emphasis on process instead of accountability. But the silence couldn't hold anymore. The numbers were too large. The paper trail was too real. This isn't about motive. It's about contrast. The same outlets that once minimized the story now have to acknowledge it exists, even if reluctantly. And that shift matters because when media coverage lags reality, trust collapses. Viewers notice, taxpayers notice, and the people under investigation, they definitely notice. Silence works until it doesn't. And once it breaks, it never comes back the same. So this is the moment where the fear stops being political and it starts being personal. When fraud is tied to immigration status, the exposure goes far beyond fines or repayment. Benefits fraud connected to false statements, concealed facts, or misrepresentation doesn't just trigger audits, it reopens legal status itself. This is why citizenship suddenly matters. If access to programs, grants, or nonprofit roles depended on sworn filings that turn out to be false or fake, investigators don't stop at the money. They look at the entire chain of eligibility. And once that chain is questioned, protections people assumed were permanent suddenly aren't. Now, this isn't retroactive punishment. It's procedural review, paperwork versus reality. Now, here's why panic sets in. You can negotiate penalties, sure. You can settle repayments. But when citizenship status becomes part of the fraud inquiry, there's no PR strategy that fixes that overnight. That's when cooperation fractures, silence spreads, and everyone involved starts asking the same question. Well, who gets looked at first? So state investigators move slowly, federal investigations move quietly, and that difference matters. Now, a lot of people are suggesting that Ilhan Omar should be looked at first. And, it's not because she's a Somalian congresswoman, but there are a lot of rumors swirling around about her eligibility, her legal status regarding her citizenship here in America. Now, I'm not sure what you read about Ilhan Omar, but that is absolutely up for debate. When the Department of Justice escalates, timelines stretch, then suddenly collapse. Subpoenas go out without warning. Assets are frozen before headlines appear. Agencies coordinate behind closed doors while public silence grows. This is the phase people underestimate because DOJ doesn't rush. They stack cases, they map networks, they wait for leverage, and then when arrests happen, they don't come one at a time, they come in clusters. This is why the panic feels delayed but intense. Now, for months, nothing seemed to happen. Then everything happens at once. Now, here's a key detail. Federal prosecutors don't announce targets until they're ready. Silence isn't inactivity, it's preparation. So when you hear less, not more, that's when the timeline is actually accelerating. And for anyone that's inside of the scandal, the clock is no longer flexible. Now, here's the political box Democrats now find themselves stuck in, and there's no clear exit on this one. Now, for years, early warnings about fraud were brushed off as noise, overreaction, or politically motivated smears. The instinct was always the same: minimize first, investigate later, if at all. That framing worked when the numbers were small enough to blur. But confirmed losses don't care about framing. Once the figures balloon from millions to billions, the old defenses collapsed. You can't wave away spreadsheets, you can't dismiss federal subpoenas, and you can't keep calling it hysteria when DOJ is involved. That's the trap. Admitting the problem earlier would have required accountability. Admitting it now raises the question everyone is asking: why wasn't this stopped sooner? Silence looks worse, deflection looks weaker, and every attempt to downplay the scope just highlights how long it was allowed to grow. This isn't a messaging failure. This is a credibility crisis. And Minnesota is no longer an outlier. It's the template. So once a fraud case reaches this scale, federal agencies don't stop at state borders. They ask a different question. Where else does this structure exist? Same programs, same grant models, same nonprofit pipelines, same oversight gaps. That's when quiet reviews happen. Other states aren't making announcements, they're pulling records, auditing contracts, rechecking certifications, not because they're guilty, but because no one wants to be next. And that's the real expansion point. This stops being about Minnesota's policies and it starts becoming about national vulnerability. If one system failed this badly, others could too. This is why officials elsewhere are suddenly careful with their words, because once investigators identify a repeatable model of abuse, replication becomes the risk. Minnesota opened the door. The federal review is now walking through it everywhere. And so this is where everything ties together, because what you're watching isn't a one-off crackdown, it's doctrine. President Donald J. Trump has made something very clear in his second term. Fraud is not a budget issue, it's a national weakness. And weaknesses get exploited by bad actors, by organized schemes, and by systems that assume enforcement will always blink first. This is why Trump's approach links immigration enforcement, benefits oversight, and DOJ action into one unified posture. No more silos, no more that's somebody else's problem. If fraud touches federal money, federal authority follows it all the way. This isn't about punishment for punishment's sake. It's about deterrence. It's restoring credibility for programs that actually matter. And it's sending a message that the United States will no longer subsidize deception. This is why this doctrine scares the system. Because once fraud equals weakness, tolerance disappears. And once tolerance disappears, accountability becomes inevitable. So let's go ahead and end here where we began, with the panic. Now, what you're seeing right now isn't media hysteria or partisan theater. It's procedural fear. Investigations don't explode all at once. They compound quietly, methodically, relentlessly. And so as reviews widen, cooperation fractures, people start protecting themselves instead of each other, paper trails surface that were never meant to be compared side by side, and silence, once protective, becomes suspicious. This is why the panic feels uneven, because some people are calm, so others are scrambling, because not everyone has the same exposure. Now, here's the silent truth. This thing didn't blow up overnight. It detonated because cover-ups failed, delays ran out, and enforcement finally caught up to reality. Trump didn't create this scandal. He removed the ceiling that kept it contained. And once that ceiling is gone, there's no putting the pressure back in the bottle. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.